In this chapter, I want to build on the discussion we had in the prior chapter about ethnographic research. A question that should well be in your mind at this point is, well, so where should we do the ethnographic research? And the answer is here in this chapter, where we're going to talk about the difference between core markets and edge markets and discover how the edge might be the place to find the future. For this chapter, we'll think of the market as a bell curve. And of course, all companies are looking for a really big core market because that's where lots of profit's going to be made. And on the other hand, on the outsides, on what we might call the edge markets, there might not be a lot of interest for us. There might not be a lot of customers there, and there might not be a lot of opportunity there. Because what's on the edge? Well, on the edge are the non-users, people who aren't our customers, or perhaps we'll find the extreme users there, people who use our products and services, but in ways that we don't understand and may not be even comfortable with. So to investigate the core market, we assemble a focus group. We engage with typical users to understand how they're thinking about our products and services, how they're using them, how we could improve them. On the other hand, we suggest here the idea that on the edge might be where you would find an unfocused group. And of course, the key point is at the bottom of the screen, because it's very often the case that the edge markets is where we find the future. So too often we're focused on the core, but the core is the past. And we need to understand where the market is evolving to, and that means that we have to explore or examine on the edge. So very often when we're undertaking an ethnographic research project, we look precisely for the non-users. How could we transform non-users into core users? Or how can we understand what extreme users are doing? Because it's very often the case that what they're doing today is what may be interesting for the core market tomorrow. So we look for new ideas on the edge, and then we test them at the core, because in many, many markets, products and services, business to consumer, business to business, the innovations are coming from the edge. So let's take a look at a few examples. All of these companies and brands originated on the edge. Amazon was an edge brand. E-commerce was a new thing. No one expected that Jeff Bezos would eventually be the wealthiest man in the world when he was packing boxes of books in his garage in Seattle. Apple was also an edge brand, marginalized by IBM, producing great products, but IBM had 95% of the market share with the IBM PC. When Netflix originated, Blockbuster was the dominant company in the video rental industry. Netflix was a fringe brand that had a very small and quite unusual business model. Well, in the business model section, we'll have an entire case study on Blockbuster and Netflix. And of course, you already know the outcome. You know that Netflix is a hugely valuable company and Blockbuster's out of business. But there's more to learn from that case, and we'll take a look at it in detail. Nike also started out as an edge brand. When Nike was established, Adidas was the global giant in sports shoes and sports apparel. And Nike came with essentially a different business model, started on the edge, but gradually dominated the market and displaced Adidas. Adidas had to copy what Nike had done in order to regain its market share. Southwest Airlines, which we'll also have a case study on in the innovation culture module, was an upstart airline, had only 3 routes, started with 4 airplanes, but quite quickly transformed the entire airline industry. Again, innovations from the edge, moving to the core. All of the other airlines were forced to copy what Southwest had pioneered because Southwest's business model was so much more effective. Toyota Scion, also an edge brand. Toyota was concerned about its share of the American market because it was selling its products primarily to baby boomers and was worried about how it would sell products to their children, to Gen X, Y, and Z. Uber, of course, started out as an edge brand because taxis had total dominant market share all over the world. And yet Uber's innovations have been copied by the taxi industry, and Uber, Lyft, Didi, Bolt, and the other ride-sharing companies have completely transformed urban transportation. Again, innovations from the edge. Lastly on this list is Walmart. Well, you may remember that Walmart started off as a retailer in rural America with just a few stores. But Sears ignored the Walmart business model, the Walmart innovations in supply chain and distribution, and even in where they located their stores. And that enabled Walmart to grow in rural markets where Sears wasn't even paying attention. And of course, before long, Walmart had surpassed Sears because Walmart continued to be an innovator while Sears stagnated. So all of these companies are business model innovators. They also have started on the edge. They saw something, the founders saw something on the edge that looked interesting, And gradually, they transformed that from a fringe market on the edge to the core market, and they came to dominate the marketplace. Just highlighting Toyota Scion here, because in the next chapter, we have a very detailed case study on Toyota Scion. I had the opportunity to meet Jim Farley, who led the Scion team at Toyota. Farley is now the COO of Ford, and he's rumored to be in line to be CEO. He's a brilliant executive. It's a fabulous story. I think you'll find it really, really interesting. Now, last key point that I want to make here on the core and edge model is that the old core market doesn't stay where it is. So I've listed some companies: Blockbuster, Macy's, Nokia, Oldsmobile, Sears, the taxi industry, Toys R Us. They're all basically bankrupt companies or bankrupt industries because the market passed them by. So what does it look like when the market passes you by? Well, it turns out that the edge of the old market, where innovations come from, where change is coming from, becomes the core of the new market. So the new companies, the upstart companies, actually shift the entire market. So we see that the evolution of the market goes from left to right on this diagram. And the old core market companies that stay with the core for too long, they go out of business. So one of the key lessons here is that all companies have to explore the edge because, again, the evolution of the market is occurring so quickly that we have to know what the edge is. We have to understand what it is. We have to look for innovations there all the time. And we have to pull them into our core market so that we can evolve our own company. We have to move our company from left to right, or we'll be left behind. Now, there's one more concept that I want to share with you related to the bell curve. It's a variation on core and edge. It's called adoption theory. It was developed by Everett Rogers. And what Rogers understood was that in any given marketplace, on the bell curve, there are buyers who may be called early adopters, and there's the mainstream market. And the goal of any innovative company is to move from the edge, where the early adopters are the customers, into the mainstream market, into the core. Now, Jeffrey Moore, a consultant in Silicon Valley in the 1970s and 80s, wrote a fabulous book about the problems that technology companies have in moving from the early adopter market into the mainstream market. And what Moore observed is that there's a chasm between the early adopters and the mainstream, because what technology companies typically do is they fashion their marketing pitch to the early adopters, and that turns off the mainstream buyers because mainstream buyers are not interested in the same value proposition. And so what tech companies have to do if they're going to grow, if they're going to become successful ultimately, is to transform their marketing from a pitch to early adopters to a pitch to the mainstream market. So Moore's book, Crossing the Chasm, is possibly one of the best marketing books ever written. I've given numerous copies to friends and clients because the insights that the book offers are so profound and so important, not only for the technology industry, but for all industries. So there's a couple key points that I want you to take away from here. Number one, the bell curve model gives us a lot of insight into the structure and evolution of the marketplace. Number two, when we're thinking about ethnographic research and looking for where the future is going to be, looking for the customers who will define the products and services that we'll be selling tomorrow or next year, we have to look on the edge. And in order to understand those people, we'll have to do ethnographic research because, in a sense, they're a different culture. And this, of course, is exactly what Jim Farley and the Scion team did at Scion. They did ethnographic research to understand the market that Scion was targeted at. And that understanding led them to craft a unique value proposition that appealed very strongly to their target market. So be sure to check out the following chapter on the Toyota Scion. We'll learn more about Jim Farley and his very strong leadership and his very great insights into the automotive industry, into consumer behavior, into edge marketing, into ethnographic research. It's a case study that covers almost all topics related to innovation in one way or another. It's a business model innovation. It's a new venture innovation. There are some breakthroughs as well. It's a fabulous story. I think you'll really like it. So I look forward to seeing you in the next chapter.